Hello and welcome to Tell Us Your Effing Story, a podcast by franchisors for franchisors where we go behind the scenes with some of the most interesting characters in the Australian franchising industry. My name is Bruce McFarlane. I'm the host. My normal co-host, John Sully. We've got rid of John for today's episode. But we're here with some sort of new to the franchising industry. So Anya and Adrian. So welcome.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks for inviting us along.
So tell us
sorry, John, for
John. Yeah, no. So it's tell us your effing story, which is tell us your franchising story, not tell us your fucking story. But you can tell us your But we might pick up what we were talking about before. Like I am going to go right back and learn a little bit about your journey right from the very start. But maybe we'll tuck where you were just talking because that was an interesting state.
Okay.
Coming to Australia and learning a little bit about words that have different meanings from the UK because you've grown up in the UK, which we'll go back into, and you've come out to Australia. So
yeah.
How did you meet and how did you come to Australia?
Yeah, sure. So I actually didn't really plan to come to Australia. So apologies, no offense here. I went to uni with a girl who grew up in Australia. And she actually wanted to go traveling. So we had a great 3 months around India. And
you're a backpacker?
A backpacker, really dirty backpacker, 3 months in India, believe me.
Gosh,
and then she said, oh, look, let's just pop into Australia. So this pop into Australia was almost 26 years ago. And apart from a year at the end of COVID, I've been here pretty much all that time. Yeah, so we came down to Australia and I used to work in advertising. At the time, there was lots of jobs in advertising. So we kind of like fell into a job and a house and all that kind of stuff. It was very much on a plate. And then we said, look, let's try and meet some Aussie boys. And we used to run a charity event in London. And it was kind of like, bring a friend, we'll all meet up. And everyone goes off to a different location for dinner. And then if you really hate your date, don't worry because you come back into the one location and you can swap and, lose him,
So it's like a billionaire's ball,
no questions
but in a
asked.
bit more sophisticated.
That's right. And this was all pre...
Right. There were no donuts in this one.
And we're talking about 99. So this was all pre any online dating, pre RSVP and everything. So we decided to have a charity blind date, and our charity was for the Roots organization, ROOTS, which is actually based in India. And we thought, fantastic, we'll give back. We've had this amazing trip. So we pulled together a poster. This was obviously all pre any social stuff. And believe me, within like a day, we had sold out on our 85 tickets.
So what was the headline?
85 couple tickets, so about 160. So it was blind date for Roots. So that headline was the biggest clickbait before the word clickbait even existed. And Adrian was my date. So I think we've got about 3 weddings, maybe like 5 engagements.
Out of that event?
Yeah, it was It was, as a marketeer, the conversion rate was amazing. I was very proud. Yeah.
Cool. I was a backpacker. I went the other way, so I ended up in the UK and worked for a dating agency. Was my first job. So in the 90s, but again pre-internet, dating agencies. I worked by standing with a clipboard, walking around the streets of London.
Wow.
Trying to get people to join a dating agency.
Wow. Did you have to wear an outfit for that? Kind of
what
outfit
a shame I hadn't met you.
I was with a couple, most of us were from overseas. There was a French girl that I worked with and she was quite an attractive French girl. So it wasn't hard to get the male side of the dating agency filled up.
Yeah.
It was the female side of the dating agency that was challenging to get people to join the dating agency.
Yeah.
But yes. And so how did you end up at this event?
I'd actually been in the US working for a few years and I'd come back and there was a guy who I'd met in the US who was an American who'd moved to Australia. And he rang me one night and said, look, he was going to this event and he just didn't want to go by himself and did I want to join him? And I said, what is this event? What's it about? And he said, it's blind date for Roots. I was like, okay, I'll be there. So it was actually your friend who came to my office to deliver the ticket because, again, this was the days there was almost no email at this point. So it was very early in the sort of the journey of technology. And so your friend actually came to hand deliver me the ticket the night before the event, and she said she liked my shoes. So then she organised me to be Anya's date for the night.
You're like him. He's got nice shoes.
I think my shoe game's gone downhill a lot since then.
Suddenly everyone's looking at your shoes.
So you grew up in Sydney?
I grew up in Wollongong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Magonga.
Yeah. But you've worked overseas.
Yeah. So my first job out of university was with a consulting firm called Bain & Company.
Yeah.
And so the first job I ever did professionally out of university was actually in San Francisco with Bain & Company. So it was a great opportunity to sort of get out from Wollongong to Sydney to go to university. I went to the University of New South Wales and then joined Bain & Company and spent my first day working in San Francisco and spent about 18 months or 2 years in San Francisco.
We're going to go back to UK growing up, but growing up in Wollongong, so what were the things you did as a kid? Surfing, playing sport, outdoorsy?
Yeah, all of that. I mean, Wollongong was a great place to grow up. It was very outdoorsy. It was a long time ago now that we grew up, so the world was very different then. So, you know, I'd go out with my friends. We'd just get on our bikes and leave the house in the morning and get home, around dinner time. And the rest of the day we were just out. Yeah, we're not right on the beach, but we were we'd ride everywhere. So we'd be this beach and then that beach, and then we'd go and play some golf and then go spear fishing and then surfing at another beach. So it was a very outdoor lifestyle.
And how many siblings?
5 of us, 5 kids. God. Yeah. So, I just had my mother staying over for our middle daughter's birthday.
Yeah.
So she came up from Wollongong. She still lives
there. Oh, the family is still down there? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So my dad's passed away, but mum's still there, and one of my brothers is still in Wollongong. So grandma or my mum was up last night for our daughter's birthday.
Yep.
So we just put her on the train, packed her off back to the Gong. So we've been there, long routes in Wollongong.
And so as a kid, besides running around and beating up your brothers and sisters, and what else? What sort of things were you interested in at school? Was it with a family in business, by the way? So they
no. I keep telling people I come from a medical family. So whenever anyone has a medical issue, I say I've come from a medical family. I have no knowledge myself, but I grew up in a medical family. So my dad was a doctor. He was a radiologist, and that's why we ended up in Wollongong, because he joined a radiology practice in Wollongong. And my mum was a nurse, which is
that's
sort of
how
she.
I was going to say way more medical than me. Yeah. So
Well, one of my sisters is also now a radiologist, which and my brother-in-law is a psychiatrist, and so that's sort of the medical.
Did you do the math science path then as a kid?
Look, I sort of did, but economics, maths, those kind of subjects I related to a lot more than English or languages, and I always had a strong interest in business. So once I grew out of thinking I was going to captain the Australian cricket team or play Aussie rules football professionally.
You played Aussie rules?
No, I didn't. Once I got past
thinking, played that in Wollongong?
I did play that. Yeah, I did play that. I played Aussie rules from under 11s until I was 20.
Because it's not big in Wollongong.
No, but we had some good family friends, and the parents were friends of my parents, and the boys were my best friends growing up, and they'd come from Western Australia.
Okay.
So they had more of a Aussie rules heritage coming from Western Australia. So we just got into it, and we actually played. I ended up playing since I can't remember exactly when I started, maybe 8 years old till I was about 20.
Yeah.
And was actually invited to trial for the Sydney Swans a very long time ago, and found myself at one point running up and down the stadium at the Sydney Cricket Ground with Warwick Capper.
Yeah, Warwick Capper was going to say.
Yeah, it was part of around those days.
Yeah.
But I realised this was during summer in Wollongong, and all my friends were at the beach, and it was summer, and I was at university, all surfing, and I was running around in a sport that I knew actually wasn't good enough to make that level anyway. And so
to make it from New South Wales back then, that would have been it's pretty tough. Like considering, I grew up in Victoria, and so everyone's playing footy. That was all what everyone was doing.
Yeah, no, there's very little in the way. I mean, my high school was Kira High School, was just a public school in Wollongong, and so there was really no Australian rules football. We formed a team because we had quite a few of us who were now playing on the weekends. We formed a team for the school, and we ended up winning the state championship. So it was all a student-run exercise, but we put the team together, convinced all our friends to play. So we had a little rugby league, rugby union players, The state at that point didn't include the southern parts of the state were on the Victorian border because they would have killed us. Yeah, but the non-Aussie rules playing state, we won. Exactly, we didn't play against any Albury teams. No, they were in a different league.
Cool. Yeah. What about you as a kid? So
very different. I feel as though you've just been speaking in a completely different language. I'm like, okay, if I fall to sleep, then I actually played quite a bit of tennis, and I actually
So whereabouts in the UK?
In the Peak District.
I have no idea what that
is. So yeah, okay. So the Peak District National Park is the largest and oldest national park in England.
Okay.
Yeah, so everyone knows kind of like the Lake District, but actually the Peak District is bigger. So smack in the middle. So between Manchester and Sheffield. Okay. So, obviously Sheffield, Manchester back in those days, pretty grimy, industrial cities, and the Peak District is just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Highly preserved, feudal system, you get various lords owning, villages and all that kind of stuff.
So you're in a village in this, like a pretty small town?
I was born there, but I actually, my dad had businesses in Sheffield, and I actually went to school in Sheffield. So, quite a city, kind of like a bit of a, in the week was very city, catching 2 buses into the city centre, and then the weekend in the beautiful countryside. So a little bit of both, yeah.
My daughter's partner is from Burnley, so she just did last.
Okay.
So
is that Birmingham?
It's closer to Manchester, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So small village, and so she did a month there at Christmas and stuff. She's 24, just turned 24 now.
Yeah.
But so that's that village, like, because my experience in London, my experience of the UK was living in London and going to pubs. That was pretty much it.
That was my 20s. Yeah.
I didn't actually spend much. I played Aussie rules in London. And so,
did you really?
Yeah.
Oh,
wow. So early season 93, 94, and we went to Liverpool and stuff to play footy because there was teams in some of the bigger places up there. So most fun was Liverpool. Going, all your mates go up there. We went to do that, but I didn't get to do all those little towns and stuff. But
there's so many places in the UK. I mean, there's still so many places we haven't been to. Yeah.
And your family's still there?
Yeah, they are. My sister's on a farm. She has sheep, lots of sheep, and my mum is there as well, like in the heart of the little village. So, and we've actually still got a house there, so we spend a little bit of time there. Yeah.
And so you, as a kid, you said tennis, so you played,
I played tennis.
You're in a country, so it's,
Yeah, I played tennis.
As well,
I actually did a lot of martial arts, so I did jiu-jitsu. So I was something like the 2nd or 3rd youngest female in the UK, because at that time it was very much, a boys' sport.
Yeah,
so, my hips feel it now, but, I would just be I'd be throwing 6'4" guys and all that kind of stuff. So there was like no, occupational health and safety in those days. It was just like, you're that level, you're going with those guys. So,
That's why I'm very careful with what I say. I never quite know when that hip throw is going to come out.
I can't really remember much, unfortunately.
That's right, exactly, yeah.
Say the wrong thing.
That's right, exactly.
It's never really been put to the test, but hoping the muscle memory is still there. So, yeah.
And so what did mum and dad do?
So my dad actually worked for Olivetti, the old typewriters, and then he basically set up his own business. So he had a service side and a sales side. So he was right in the city centre. He had like a lot of commercial clients. I don't know, team of maybe like 15, something like that. So typical small business. Yeah. So I would finish school and then, go and hang out, in the shop kind of thing, or in the workshop. And
so did you study business subjects at school then?
Not really, no. I was, I was always very interested in business. My sister and I had an Avon round. I think I was like 12 years old, so we were always kind of like, we loved, developing little posters and pretend businesses and things like that. So I always, I guess, had that entrepreneurial spirit. But I went down quite a traditional route. I went to university, studied quite traditional subjects. I did geography, Middle Eastern politics, would you believe?
Traditional
but do not ask.
Don't have it get where you end up with that.
Yeah. Do not ask me anything about Middle Eastern politics.
Well, there's a bit of work to be done in the Middle East. You could probably get a job.
I know. Unfortunately, my muscle memory.
He's going to solve it all.
Oh, I know. I think I should take it off my LinkedIn profile because I think people approach me thinking I'm way more interesting and have way more to say in Middle Eastern politics than I do. So,
have you been to the Middle East? Is that the backpacking didn't get you there?
Yes, I guess if we've been to Dubai
on the way back.
Yeah.
What's the Atlantic?
I was going to say,
the
airport and a couple of hotels, but no, not really.
Not really?
Yeah.
Oh, we did. Our backpacking, we ended up went from Turkey, Syria, Jordan, Israel,
nice.
Egypt.
Wow. Yeah.
It was great, but, you know, obviously there was conflict.
Yeah.
There's been conflict for 2,000 years.
That's right, yeah.
There's conflict, but no, it's interesting. But you know more about. I knew nothing. I didn't even know where I was going, but it was great.
I did know a lot. Yeah, I'm not so sure now.
Hasn't come in that handy in later life.
No, definitely not that handy. Yeah, so quite the traditional route really at uni. And I guess the difference in the UK, you study a subject and employers don't really care what you've studied. It's more about the depth of the subject, university. They don't really care. Like a lot of people go into, let's say, finance from biology or history or, maths, whatever. It doesn't really matter so
where was
so
you?
much.
Were you in Sheffield in the university? Or?
No, I was at Durham.
Okay.
Yeah. So in those days, it was known as the Oxbridge rejects. So, if you don't get in, then you end up at Durham. So very academic, beautiful old town on the river. And I loved it. Had a great time.
I think the people that I know that went to university in the UK, it's that because most people in Australia, I think if you live in Sydney or Melbourne, you go to university in Sydney or Melbourne. Yeah. Particularly now, the kids can't afford to move out.
Right.
Whereas the UK experience seems a lot more fun because you go and you move, like the US one.
Yeah.
You move away.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
you're 19, 20, living with your mates.
Yeah,
having a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Not sure
amazing.
what you want to do when you finish, but it was great.
That's
you're
right.
Middle Eastern politics.
Yeah, that's right. No idea what you've been listening to for the last 3 years, but but no, definitely. And now, our eldest is 18. And even actually our 16-year-old or now 17-year-old, you don't really want to know what they're up to. So actually going away is the best thing because, going out, coming back at 2 a.m. in the morning, there's a lot of stuff as parents you just do not want to be across. So I think it's way better.
Out of mind, out of sight.
I've got
way better
kids
if you send your kids away.
So we'll see. My parents, when I was a kid, moved out and kicked us out. When my brother and I finished school. So that was kind of like we just had to get on with it. And that was because that's my parents' generation. And my wife and I debate. And I've got 4. And so 17, 19, 22 and 24. And they're at home.
Wow. So you do get to see it all.
Yeah, it's a really busy place. Yeah. So, but you're getting, like you say, the parents go away, the kids go,
Yeah.
So, but you moving away in the UK, the experience of
definitely
it's
amazing.
Growing up,
it's part of that development. Spreading your wings and building your independence and
you live on your own, so you get used to cooking for yourself and managing bills and all that kind of stuff. So I would highly recommend it. Yeah.
And so, what was your first job after university then?
So I worked for the BBC. Actually, I got offered one of 2 spots on their graduate program, and it meant that we were actually moved around all the various departments at the BBC, and this was in the media side. So it wasn't the main TV, it was their magazine side. So magazines in those days, I'm talking early 90s, were massive. So Radio Times, like a TV listings magazine, was one of the biggest magazines. And it was amazing, really, really interesting. So you got to spend time in editorial, distribution, marketing, sales, with the guys who'd be selling them into the supermarkets and stuff. So a bit of everything.
And you're in London now? Or where are you living?
So this was kind of like the side kick, really, was that there I am, got my job offer, just so excited, and then I saw in the small print that I was going to be actually in their Peterborough office 3 days a week to 4 days a week, and in London 1 day a week. And so I was like, oh my God, I don't even know where Peterborough is.
Where is it?
Like East Coast, like kind of like just below, just above Cambridge. And I knew a guy from uni who was brought up in Peterborough. And I said, look, where should I live in Peterborough? Where's the best places? And he's like, London. He's like, you just don't live in Peterborough, the most boring place on earth. Yeah. So it was a little bit of a commuting, but yeah, it was great exposure to, at the time, an amazing company, amazing training, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so. Lots of fun.
In those days, magazines would have been in the peak of their power. They were just like rivers of gold, and so you getting involved in the magazine business was a great place to be in those days, because there was so much money coming into them and a lot of investment going back into them to keep building that.
Yeah, one of the I'm a lawyer, and one of the clients of our firm was Lonely Planet, and so we sold to BBC, and so but just that the book side of it, and all the evolution of media, from the magazines that being exposed through legal clients, but into those sectors. It's lots of fun.
Yeah, it is. Lots of fun. In the 90s, it was lots of fun.
Big expense accounts.
Yeah, advertising. I then, went more kind of like the traditional ad agency route. And yeah, exactly. Long lunches, big accounts. Smoking. I remember, my colleagues would sit there and smoke during the day, and we'd eat kind of like crisps from our client, crisps and Cadbury's from our Cadbury's client.
It's not necessarily a healthy lifestyle in London.
Typical London lifestyle. Typical London lifestyle.
Yeah. And you had to move away for uni as well, though, to move up to Sydney?
I did. I went to University of New South Wales. But as you say, I wanted to do that. It was great. I love my family very much, but there's a time in life when you want to move on and spread your wings. And so I never lived on campus in undergrad in the dorm, as we were with some friends. We just rented a place nearby.
So you did commerce, economics?
I did do Bachelor of Commerce, so economics and finance.
Yeah. And because you did those subjects at school,
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I regard myself as fortunate in that I've always had a fairly clear idea of what I wanted to do. I've seen plenty of people in life who just
unusual.
Don't. Yeah, a lot of people don't really know what to do, and it can be stressful for them.
When you're 18.
Yeah, that's right. So for me, even when I was a teenager, 15, 16, I'd be reading books of all of these deals being done in London and New York, and the barbarians at the gate, the big private equity deals. And I was always really intrigued by those things. So for me, business and investing and doing deals was always the path I was going to head. Even though I come from this medical family that I mentioned, I never really had any interest in going down the medical path. My dad always wanted me to become an accountant, because he said, we've got the medical side covered. We need something else. We need a good accountant in the family, but that didn't really appeal to me. So I always had a clear idea it was something business related.
Yeah.
And so for me, the Bachelor of Commerce was the obvious choice. And so I did that at University of New South Wales. It was a 4-year course and loved it. Had a great time.
And then Bain was the first job out of uni?
That's right, yeah. So coming out of university, I thought I might go and work for an investment bank. And the other thing that came to my attention fairly late in the piece was the management consulting path, which wasn't as well known back then as it
because I imagine similar generation to me that all the big accounting firms were all over the universities.
Yeah.
So the normal part, like the most common, or a lot of people did law and commerce, and
that's right. Yeah.
So they go to the bigger law firms, or they go to the big PwC, KPMG. That's where you go, and it's where you've gone into something like Bain or to that. It's a lot more niche to get
very
into
niche,
there.
Yeah.
They don't take as many grads back then.
But Bain was. In Australia, it was very small then. There was probably 15 people in the office in Australia. And so it was a global firm, so there were a lot more people internationally. But they had a policy where they would send you to one of the big overseas offices, and to get that training, to get inculcated in the Bain way and to become brainwashed in the Bain way. So that really appealed to me, to have the opportunity to spend my first year or two professionally overseas was great.
It's a long way from Wollongong in San Francisco.
Yeah, a long way from Wollongong, yeah, exactly, yeah. A long way from Wollongong. And I was actually meant to go to, I think I was meant to go to Boston. That's the head office for Bain initially. And I remember getting this call sometime I was going to start in January 91, I think it was. And I got this call in the summer holidays from someone saying, oh, look, I'm XYZ from Bain and I understand you're joining us. And I was like, yeah, that's right, I am. And they would say, well, I'm sure you're aware of what's going on in the world, and it's I'm sure you're on top of that. And I had no idea what was going on in the world because I was in my last summer holidays before working, so I was like just
who won the cricket last?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But I was already learning to be a consultant naturally, so I was yes, I'm aware of what's going on, and in my mind thinking, what is he talking about? And of course, there was a big recession was going on in the world, and I had no idea. So there was even these consulting firms were struggling. Everyone was struggling. It's a very deep recession. And so they said, you're not going to go to Boston anymore. We're going to send you to London, because that was just where some more work was. And I was like, okay, is that all right? Is that all right? Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. I'll put up with London.
They're both cold, by the way.
Both cold, yeah. Both cold.
That's right.
But for me,
colder than Wollongong, no beach, no surf.
But at this point, my family was originally from New Zealand, so I'd never been anywhere outside of Australia other than the odd trip back to New Zealand. So to go anywhere outside of Australia was like an epic adventure. So Boston,
You didn't
London.
do the backpacking thing like me when you were
No, I
at uni?
didn't. No, I didn't do any of that. So for me,
he studied hard. That's how he got a job.
That's
at Bain.
right. He doesn't like getting dirty.
You're backpacking. I'm backpacking. He's just got the books out.
He's just got and his suit out and his tie and
all his mates are still surfing.
So I set my sights on London. Yeah. And then about a day before I left, I got another call saying, look, you're not going to London now, because there was actually they got involved in a big scandal with Guinness and an insider trading scandal, and the recession was hitting London very, very hard. So they said, you're going to San Francisco. So literally it wasn't until probably 18 hours before I got on the flight that I knew I was going to San Francisco. So they just switched to San Francisco. But that was great. So I spent almost 2 years in San Francisco, and that office was very busy. They just had a lot of clients on. So it was a great experience. And I love Bain. Bain's a great place to start a career.
I think it's like the big accounting firms and consulting firms, like the training that you get, because they're used to having grades coming through. So and they've got amazing clients, so you're getting exposure to some fantastic stuff. I spent a year in Northern California because I wanted to learn. I wanted to be a punter, play professional football.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah.
So I grew up in Melbourne wanting to play Aussie rules, but I wasn't that good at it. So I thought I'll go to America and try and learn how to do that.
It was early in people trying to do that.
This is in the 80s. Yeah. And tried to learn how. But so did you get involved in American football? Because you could kick the ball, so you could have got a goal. 49ers didn't call?
49ers didn't call, no. Look, I enjoyed watching it, but no, there was no chance I was ever going to become a professional NFL player.
Yeah, no, it's good. And so I'll jump forward a bit, but you went to Harvard as well, so you did end up in Boston. So
that's right, yeah.
So how so you spent a couple of years in Boston doing?
Look, I did, yeah. So look, again, from a very young age, I somehow got it fixed in my head that I wanted to go to Harvard. It was always a sort of a dream of mine, and as I say, I've always had a very business-oriented view of where I wanted to head. And to me, HBS was just the pinnacle of business education, and it was just always an ambition. And when I was growing up in Wollongong, kicking footballs around on the beach, it was always just a dream that I knew would never come true. So then I was at Bain. I came back to Australia with Bain and worked on some projects for a couple of years in Asia and through back in Australia, but also throughout Asia. But one of the early private equity firms was a group called Bain Capital, which is a spin-off from Bain and Company. So by being part of that Bain network, I became aware of this private equity industry, which back then was very much in its infancy. And that really got my attention because I thought this is the perfect industry. It's got deals, buying and selling companies, running businesses, investing. Everything that I wanted to do was all bundled up into one industry. So I really started getting excited by the potential to find a way into that industry. And Bain Capital was the obvious path, and I knew someone who was working at Bain Capital because I'd met him at Bain and he'd moved over to Bain Capital. And he said, look, there's a company that we're doing a joint deal with at the moment called AEA Investors based in New York. I heard that they're looking for someone. So I got in touch with AEA investors in New York, just cold called them, and said, this is who I am, and this is my background, and I'd love to talk to you about an opportunity there if something exists. And so I was working on a project in Hobart at the time in Tasmania, and I remember doing all these 3 o'clock in the morning calls from Hobart in the hotel to New York, doing all these interviews with this firm, and ultimately got a job there, got offered a job. And so after about 4 years at Bain, left and went to New York. And I spent 2 years in New York with AEA investors in the private equity industry, which was a great time. And
New York would have been boring though, not much.
No, that's right. Yeah,
exactly.
Not much happening
for
in
a young single
like-
guy.
Young single guy
in New York. It was tough.
Hobart, New York in the 90s. Same.
Yeah,
Straight from
it's
Hobart
kind of
to
like
New York.
Petersboro, wherever that is.
That's right. You'll have to Google that after today. Yeah.
Hold on a second, John. I want to interrupt this BDC Partners podcast to let everyone know we've launched Emerging Giants, an investment opportunity. We're designed to uncover and support Australia's next generation of retailers and franchisors. So what are we looking for?
Right. So we want small businesses, franchise systems, whatever, that have got 3 outlets or more that are looking to grow, that we can help. And we're going to invest up to 250 grand, whether in one or in multiples, and also the resources, full resources of BDC, so we can help them realise their dreams. That's pretty much it. We're going to do a pitch night.
So we're here to support founders and business owners to really to grow their businesses. They don't have to be franchised. They could be retail businesses.
Yep.
They can have territories, they don't have to be bricks and mortar.
Nope.
We're looking at all sorts of businesses. It'll be we're having a pitch night in Melbourne on the 13th of November. It'll be at Fordham's and the Rialto. So people will be coming in from interstate. So what we're going to do during the day is have an education event. So during that day, we'll start after lunch and we'll look at getting some speakers in where we can present to the emerging franchisors and retailers, as well as doing some peer-to-peer learning. So bringing some other business owners in there to help out and to facilitate some discussions.
Yep.
We've been running education events for about 5 years, so we're pretty good at running those events and helping the franchisors and retailers that we work with. So if you're interested, people listening today, the link below in the episode description, you can put in an application form and be part of our Emerging Giants.
Get into it, guys. We're here to help. We want to grow it and inject your business today.
Yes, but so New York, yes.
So I spent 2 years in New York, and back in those days, no one knew what private equity was. Even in New York, it was KKR. You probably will have heard of now. It's one of the largest private equity groups, and at the time they were the biggest fund in the world, and it might have been a $1.2 billion fund, which is tiny by today's standards. And now that business is worth, or their funds under management are probably north of $500 billion or something. So the world's changed a lot. So it was really exciting time to be doing deals. All sorts of
being an Aussie in New York's not the worst thing in the world either.
No.
Yeah.
Even though I am intrigued by your because you do sound like you've lived in different places. Like what?
Right.
Yeah, everyone's always confused by your accent, aren't they?
Because it's like you don't sound like you're from Wollongong.
No.
Like,
Right.
I think kind of like we once termed it like mid-Atlantic kind of thing.
Because it depends on the word.
Yeah,
It's hanging out with you. He's got a bit of a UK
I think so.
thing.
Yeah. And the New Zealand as well.
Yeah. My parents grew up in New Zealand, so there was that influence in there
all
somewhere.
over the place. But so did you? Well, I would have thought that the Australian accent would have been okay in New York, though. It would have worked for you.
What do you mean? What context?
Not listening.
My
not
wife's
listening.
just sitting over there.
Can I just say that I don't think Adrian ever paid $1 in rent because of his relationship with his landlady. So it was very gratuitous. Another type of private equity.
You got to find a way to trim those
A whole
costs.
other level of private equity, wasn't it?
Yeah. But that's where I met that American guy who moved to Australia, and he invited me to the Blind Dates for Roots event, which is where I met Anya.
Right.
So there you go.
He's American.
He's American. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So he that's the
Well, that's all worked out all right.
all worked out all
full
right.
circle, full circle. Yeah,
So my
that's
time
right. He'd had his high life, and I'd had my dirty life backpacking. And it all came together.
You've had a shower and
Yeah, that's right.
You're
1 or
living
2
in-
showers.
and then you went, but you didn't, and so you spent the time in Boston after that.
And that's when I went to HBS after that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went from San Francisco back to sort of Australia, but also doing projects in Asia, back to New York, and then from New York to Boston to go to business school.
And so in all those places, which football team do you follow in the US after living in New York, San Francisco, and Boston? Any of them? Or
No, look, for some reason, I not really. No, I used to go for.
I was going to say the Patriots because you live in Boston.
No, well, I used to go for the Pittsburgh Steelers before even when I was still in Wollongong. I don't even know where I heard about them, but somehow I got them into my head. But it was never a strong allegiance or a strong following. So now I've kept it fairly broad. I used to love the ice hockey. So the Rangers I used to go and see quite a lot, like the ice hockey in New York, and the New York Yankees won the World Series when I was in New York as well. The baseball World Series.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to come back to the private equity stuff because I think as a franchise, how it links into franchising, because I know, but I might talk about being in business together is another thing. So I'll jump around a bit, but
sure.
A couple of my clients are in the franchising world. So I've done a bit of work with Jeff and Janine Ellis over the year, which is a Bain Capital story. So they, in business together and, negotiating deals with private equity firms with both of them at the table and stuff. And they've managed it very well. And I know Janine's talked on podcasts. And then another smaller business, Flip Out, which is a trampoline business. It's a couple, and then Nurse Next Door is another friend. You might have met Matt and Amber at franchising things. I think I have. Yeah. So they're another husband-wife team, and it's a home services franchise business, and so it's interesting. But this is sort of being the lawyer on a lot of these things is franchising family businesses and working in that, and so how to balance that. So we'll roll forward to you've got a business together, you have a couple of businesses, but you've got a business together. How's that been working with your partner in a family business that will franchise?
Yeah, look, well, we're here today.
You're still here.
So, we shared a taxi together, so it's going so far.
Because the business is quite new,
Yeah, that business is new. We've kind of officially been working together for maybe about 3 or 4 years now. I'd probably say 4 years. And yeah, it goes well. I think the thing is we've both got very different backgrounds, different strengths, different experiences, and so we're very complementary. We very rarely do we overlap where I disagree with what he's thinking because it's not my area of expertise, and I think kind of that works both ways. So I mean, we do as well, we often kind of share an office space, but occasionally, Adrian will go and work in the city office and I might just stay at home. So I think having that occasional break is quite good. And also as well, we do take, we take a lot of, breaks. We kind of I'll go and meet a girlfriend for coffee or, go to the gym, or Adrian will go to his gym. So I think having that balance is really important. So we don't try and do everything together.
It's tricky I've on a very small scale, I've just got a business with my kids now, I'm working in it, and having that line between, I got in trouble by my wife a few times about, I'd see my kids and it was just about the business. And it's having that, okay, so now we're not talking, we're talking about the kids, or we're talking about what we're doing, or, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not just talking about the businesses when we're sitting at home, and having that, some people make rules. There's no business talk at the dinner table, or there's no, or there's no laptops in the bed. Whatever.
I think we do.
It
I
is
think we
challenging.
struggle with that as well at times. Because one of us will be frustrated about something. And just, did you get back to that email? And I'll often try and say, look, let's not, let's try and make that separation. But then something goes into my head, and it's like, oh, did you follow up on that? And so it'd be quite hard, because there are lots of things you actually want to talk about because it's interesting and enjoyable, and we enjoy the businesses we're involved in. But if you're talking about that at 10 o'clock at night, it's just probably not healthy in the long run.
No, it's tricky. So my parents bought into a business where my grandparents owned, and then so I grew up going to business conferences with my family and all of that stuff. So my world all of my life was business, and and being a kid of the third generation in the business. So growing up in that world, but my kids, because I was a lawyer, they didn't have that. So and so it's been a bit of an edge in our house. They hear me talk about what I'm doing, but now it's but now they're working with me in the business
Yeah,
together.
yeah,
It's been, and I know lots of if we loop across to franchising, but there's lots of franchising that start as family businesses.
That's
and
right.
So, having that, whether it be at franchisee level or at franchisor level, it's very much so. And so, the dynamics of the family are often part of it. Now you're a franchisor.
Yeah, that's right.
You're dealing with franchisees that are mum and dad. And
That's right.
That's right. Most of them are. Yeah, most of them, we've got quite a few husband and wives, husband, wife and a son, or father and son. So, a lot of, family dynamics going on. But I think, I think kind of like, we have a lot going on in our life, but our dinner table is quite interesting. It kind of like can flip from, who's playing sport this weekend, through to, have you responded to that email, or, a deal we're thinking about. So I think actually, our kids, we've got 3 girls, they really enjoy it. Like anyone who asks them, what do you want to do? They all say, I want to run a business, or I want to start a business. So, it's hopefully they've got a good impression of the business world. But you definitely, you do kind of like consciously need to, filter out, having those work conversations after like 7 o'clock.
I think some of the funniest things you see is when the kids are little and they ask primary school and they get asked what their parents do, and then they have to draw pictures of what their parents do. And and they bring it home and you're like, really? Because I'm a lawyer, like my kids had no idea what that was, when they were little.
Exactly.
How did they do that? And so then they pick up something that I've talked about what it is.
I know. No, it's true. I mean, I ran an interior design studio for quite a few years, and my girls liked that because it was something they could relate to. So for many years, they'd just say, oh, yeah, mum's an interior designer, because it was kind of like they could describe it and they'd go, oh, yeah, she did that house and blah, blah, blah. But now it's like really hard for them. So,
it's harder.
And we'll go, and so the business together, so, you looking at businesses that are $1 to $6 million in profit. So how have you, where did you figure that niche? Because you were talking, you're involved in big business and you've been in big business, and now you're back down into, okay, how can we help small businesses and working in that space? And so what was the idea behind getting involved in this space?
Look, like anything in life, a few things, I guess, came together. And I think Anya's always been more entrepreneurial than me and has been involved in small businesses for a long time. And you can sort of talk about that evolution of yours into the world of small business. But for me, I've always worked at small businesses, like Bain & Company was quite a small business when I was there. And I got into private equity. So I was in private equity for probably 18 years in the US and then back in Asia and including Australia. And we were at the big end of the town in private equity doing larger deals. I was involved in the Channel 9 deal in Australia, which was a bit of a disaster.
Depends for who.
That's true, that's true.
Which side of the deal you're on.
That's right.
But a lot of the deals we did were enormously successful. Enormously successful. And in fact, that
you want the win-win deals.
You want the win-win deals, and I think a lot of them were. And as investors, we did very well out of a lot of those early deals. But then that, in a way, sowed the seeds of its own destruction, because that lured all these other people in. So suddenly, I worked for a group called CBC, which is one of the big European buyout groups, very, very successful group. And then we were doing a lot of these deals in Asia that we were delivering enormous numbers to our investors. And so suddenly everyone perked up and got wind of that. So we had KKR and TPG and Blackstone and Carlyle and all of the big groups, the big global private equity groups arriving in Australia. And I just found that dynamic of going from this very much a cottage industry, hunting out these really interesting transactions, to suddenly becoming increasingly institutionalized, increasingly commoditized. I felt there was no differentiation between all of the big groups. I found as an investor and on the buy side, that was very unsatisfying personally, because you suddenly had sellers saying, all of you line up, whoever pays the highest price wins. And that's not a great place to be an investor on that side of the table. So I moved into the smaller end of private equity, and I was with some colleagues. We had a sort of mid-market fund. So we went from doing the $1 billion plus deals to doing the $100 million to $200 or $300 million deals, which gave me some insight into the differences between big businesses and small businesses. But I also felt that was very competitive. And whenever a deal came up, you get all these mid-market private equity firms scurrying around trying to outbid each other. So I ended up moving into the public market. So I launched a company called Avenue Capital, which was a global public market fund where we would just invest in public market businesses. And I try to take that private equity mindset of being very fundamentally oriented, investing for the long term, not just trading around numbers flashing on a screen, but being very business focused, running very concentrated portfolios and holding them for the longer term. And ran that for about 10 years. And towards the end of that time, I kept coming across these companies overseas in the US and in Europe that were delivering extraordinary returns to investors. And doing that over 10, 20, 30 years, just enormous compounding. So delivering 20 times money, 30, 50, 100, 1,000 times return on capital.
That's pretty good.
Really enormous, yeah. So,
have some of that.
yeah, so the whole concept of talking about IRRs and percentage became meaningless when you're saying, well, they've done 200 times the money in the last 20 years. So that really got my attention. And they were all following a model that was very understandable to me, given my background, and very simple, I thought, which was buying small businesses around $1 or $2 million of profit to 4 or 5 million of profit. And creating a machine, if you like, an acquisition machine that could keep identifying and executing on these small transactions.
And the model was to buy 100%?
Not necessarily to buy control, always control.
Yeah.
But often the founder might keep 10%, 20%, and that was quite a good transition. So
because it's interesting in that space though, like if you're a business that's making $1 million often they're not as sophisticated in terms of opportunities to how can I sell and who can I sell to, and it's like you sell, you go to a business broker and they sell your business and then you pack up and then you go. Like that's what you do. So that world of earnouts and
that's right.
bringing all that stuff in and going, hang on, now I'm in business with someone, and how does that mindset change for that person? But so you've got there's a bit of education, but you're on the other side of the deal at the start. And so,
but we plan to come back again and again and again. Our model is we refer to ourselves as being a serial acquisition company. So Patreon Companies is a serial acquisition business where we will buy company after company after company
and hold. And so it's not a PE model
with
a 3 to 5
perpetual
year
ownership
flip.
horizon.
Yeah.
Very different to private equity.
Yeah. And so how many? So you started that together 3?
No, we really only launched. So we already had Avenue Capital. So we kind of like turned Avenue Capital more into offering authorized representative services. So that's kind of like been running for about 3 years, hasn't it? And then Patron Companies, we did our first deal March 2024. Okay. We closed our first fundraise in December, January, kind of like the start of this year.
And so the money that's come in is come in from institutions, or is it come in from other just sort of high net worth and family and friends? Because it's smaller deals. You don't need as big a checks.
Look, to be honest, a lot of our investors are ex-private equity colleagues of mine that are new in the industry. And so high net worth is the first round. Yeah. Look, I'm not sure whether this is an institutional offering, but it's more, I think, a great family office high net worth offering.
Yep.
So, we've done the first capital raise and putting that to work now. But
so how many businesses?
Under Patron Companies right now, just the one, but it will be 2 very soon.
And the Sealer Fridge is?
Sealer Fridge, yeah. So Sealer Fridge was our first under Patron Companies. Yeah.
So how did that? So. And I looked and saw you've looked at a lot of businesses, in that time. Yeah. So what attracted you? Because you're not franchising background people.
No.
You've bought a franchise.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah, look, I'm trying to remember, actually. We'd looked at a lot at the time. And, really our process is we receive the IM. So, initially it's a very quick overview of going through the IM and, kind of like looking for some basics, like has it been established for a long time? Is it something that AI isn't going to affect it? Are the numbers looking good? Unsexy industries.
But needed.
But necessary. Yeah, exactly. Essential services. So kind of like the fact that it was a franchise model was almost kind of like secondary because it ticked so many of our boxes to get to the next level.
Yeah. So it wasn't a oh, it's a franchise, that's great, or that's no good. You didn't really have an opinion on whether or not that was going to be a good or a bad thing.
No, not
But it was
really.
the fundamentals of the business.
Yeah,
It ticked
the
all the other
fundament-
businesses.
Yeah.
It made some money. It's been
Good
around for a while.
brand, good reviews,
Yep.
all that kind of stuff. And the fact that it was a franchise model. I'd worked with a plumbing franchise group many years ago.
In the UK or here?
No, here when I was doing some marketing consulting. So I kind of like was pretty, familiar with it without knowing a lot about franchising. But to be honest with you, if you look at the breadth of our investments outside of Patreon, we can get our head around a lot of different businesses fairly quickly. And so we obviously knew there was a steep learning curve with the franchise model, with the franchise code, all those nuances. But yeah, we were still interested. The fundamentals of the business were strong enough that it supported having to learn those things.
Yeah. So this episode was brought to you by Associated Projects, Australia's trusted leader in retail fit-outs, commercial construction, fixtures, project management, 60 years of expertise. They deliver seamless and end-to-end solutions for retail and commercial spaces nationwide.
Yeah.
Now, what do they really do?
They're pretty shit at that, but they're good guys. They know their stuff, but they're shit shop fitters. But give them a go. They'll help.
Nice
you.
fellas, yeah.
Yeah.
No, amazing. Got a great. They work from big and small clients, and we've worked with them over a number of years. So
fantastic.
Thank you for your support, Associated Projects. And if you want to find out a little bit more, check out the description, the link below.
I think, my career looking at a lot of the businesses I've been involved in, that I ran an M&A practice. So it was you're in there often acting on the buy side, and so you're looking at lots of different businesses, and franchising was a part of it too. Now where franchising is most of what I do. Probably the thing that I look at it is the relationship part of franchising compared to just you pull the spreadsheet out on the business and you can look at it, and we sell widgets and we make this much money and our margins this and all of that.
Yeah.
But when you put and I'm going to come to private equity and franchising in a sec, but when you look at it and you go, well, yeah, that all makes sense, but then you've got 15 or 20 or 30 franchisees, and there's the relationship, like head office relationships are one thing, but having the relationships that you need to manage with franchisees is something that it's very different. Because they're entrepreneurs in their own. They want a return on investment. They've bought into a system because your support, because they trust you, which wasn't you, it was the people before you, someone, and now you've got this, and you've got all these people that are like, well, I describe them a little bit like teenagers, which you've got them and I've got them, is that they don't really want you, but they need you you've got money to pay for them to go out to the pub or something, that. Yeah. So there's a lot of franchisees, you've got your entrepreneurial ones, you've got your buy a job one,
That's right.
So you've now learnt all of that in the
we are, and I guess also like teenagers, you're walking on eggshells. Certainly, for the first year. So I guess our approach was we're not going to come into this, and actually this is our approach with other businesses. We're not going to come in making radical changes. We are going to also come in and speak with everyone and find where they're at. And so we recognized very early on that there was that huge diversity. There was the guy who wants to work 6 or 7 days a week and wants additional vans on the road and has a big mortgage to pay off, all that kind of stuff. And then there's other guys and they want to take 6 weeks break in Europe and play golf and the real 9 to 5. Yeah. And so we kind of like went, just throwing them into a room a few times a year. This is not, the typical, this is not going to be the right approach. We are literally going to have to go out and interview each and every one, which is what we did. And we really kind of then developed a strategy for each.
When you interview, but when you interview them, is this is due diligence or this is
no,
so
unfortunately,
how much due diligence? Because due diligence when there's franchisees is an interesting thing. So this is post. Sorry, I'll come back to that.
No, that's fine. So we didn't unfortunately get access to them
because I get that as the acting for franchisees. No, don't go near my franchisees. I'm telling you, I'm selling. So
it's very hard to.
And also, you know that they're going to send them their best franchisees and the ones they're friends with and all that kind of stuff. So, you'd have to take it with a little pinch of salt anyway. So no, this was post acquisition. So literally our first, month, and some of the guys, they weren't actually, that interested in speaking with us for many months. So our first few months,
because they're running their own business.
Yeah, that's
You're
right.
just getting in the way.
Yeah. How can you help us?
The previous owners weren't the founders of the business.
No,
they
bought it
themselves.
Yeah.
More than 10
Were
years.
they franchisees?
They were franchisees of the system.
Yeah.
And then
which is an interesting thing as well.
And then when it came time to, when it first was sold 12, 13 years ago, they thought, well, this is interesting. Let's buy the franchise itself. So they did that. And they remained franchisees as well as being the franchisor. And look, I think what we found
and they've gone back being a franchisee.
Yeah, now they're still.
So they're sold to you and they're still in the system.
As a franchisee now.
Yeah.
Look, it was a husband and wife team, as it often is, and I think the way it worked out is the husband was more on the franchisee side. They bought the business,
as in operating the unit,
operating a franchise, one territory. They bought it together, and then it was the wife of the couple who sort of ran the franchise as the franchisor, and he kept working in the field, and then they've sold the business, and he's been a franchisee all the way.
So
through.
he's just doing his thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that he.
And they were quite open in terms of saying, this isn't really in terms of running it as the franchisor system it wasn't really their thing. They didn't really realize what was involved, and they recognized their limitations in terms of, their experience in business generally and limitations in marketing and all that kind of stuff. So they were incredibly honest and open with us about that. They just run,
It'd be fairly hands-off.
But it's the same thing. It's sort of, alluding to for you guys, you've bought and sold businesses, lots of them, and been involved in business. But a franchise business does have some unique elements. Obviously, the code, but it's got, the relationship part is a very different relationship. And so even we've just invested in a business that's the current owners are a franchisee and a consultant to the franchisees, and they took it over, and it's a similar size to the one you've got. And the same thing, like the franchisees, the skill set to be, it's the same as going from being a single unit franchise to a multi-unit franchisee to,
that's right.
To being the franchisor.
Yes.
You've got to, you're looking at things differently. So so they've had to go through that journey, and it's interesting that they've stayed in the business after you've acquired it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they, he's on the tools. He loves that side. He knows it's great money. So they're not going anywhere, which is great for us because they've been, just like, oh, can you tell me where this is, kind of thing. So they've kind of like been there backing us for the last year.
But to your point about the relationships are really important between, one of the things we've learned, now we're a year into it, or a year and a bit, is that the franchisor-franchisee relationship is critical. And I think when we bought the business, I think one thing we were a bit surprised by is there was a bit of distrust. I think the previous owners had been a bit hands-off, as we've discussed. And so there's a bit of distance between what the franchisee group as a whole saw as the role of the franchisor and what the franchisor was going to do for them. So we've had to work quite hard over the last year to sort of build those relationships.
It is interesting, and it's we do these podcasts a bit and talk to lots of different franchisors, and that evolution of the franchise business, and as it goes through, and also the growth of the franchisee. So the franchisee all excited, they buy in, and because it's a brand, so you could go and start your own business, right? And that's hard. Okay, but if I go with you, then I've got a business, and they get excited. But then pretty soon afterwards, they think they do it better than the franchisor, particularly if they're not company-owned stores. So they go through that thing going, well, and particularly, like it's a tricky role for the franchisor. I just ran I'm not sure if you jumped on the podcast I did. The webinar for the FCA, the operational one.
Sorry, Bruce, I missed it.
No. I thought you were on. I thought you were on the.
I've got the recording.
I thought you were on the list.
I've got the recording. Yeah.
But the same thing. It was about the role of the operations person in the franchise system and stuff. Because so that person, that's a tough role, right? Because one, they're business coaches and they're supporting and they're doing all that stuff. But then the franchisees, say, well, I know who are they? Like, you know, I know better because
are they telling me to do
they're
what I do every day?
Yeah.
How do they know? I'm the one that's making, you know, whatever, baking the bread or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, they're a corporate, they're from head office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't know.
Yeah.
So, you know, so you've gone as the franchisor, you've got to make sure that you're listening, but then you're supporting, but then you
need to deliver. Yeah.
Yeah, but then then there's also the compliance part because you don't meet your targets, I'm going to throw you out of the system.
Yeah.
And then you've put your money into it and you're not going to get a return on investment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is a joint relationship is trying to help them be successful.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So we had to make a few tough decisions in those first few months. Individuals who really did not, match our culture and, you know, basically just were not interested in coming along on the journey. And, you know, the
culture is really interesting.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
like, what is the culture of a franchise? It's like
Yeah.
you're
These remote franchisees.
Yeah, because you're bringing in so you know, like you've been involved in lots of different businesses over here, and you know, like BBC back in first Bain, the culture of Bain, like you know what the culture of Bain is, like
Yes.
but you know, it's still. I've got mates that work at Bain, and you know, I know what it is. And but a franchise system, to build culture is a bit trickier.
It's harder.
Yes. Look, it has been tricky because, as Adrian said, you know, there was a lot of legacy and I guess disappointment, levels of, I guess, almost bitterness really over the past, you know, 10 years. So we really came into it in a way having an opportunity to actually create the culture ourselves, which, you know, can sometimes be an advantage as opposed to trying to kind of like slot ourselves into, you know, a very rigid culture. And I guess the culture that we've tried to develop, and I think we've done it, you know, pretty well, is open, transparency, you know, supportive, and, you know, not just, you know, saying we're transparent, but we, you know, bring that down to the level where, for instance, with a corporate account, whatever a franchisee bills us, then we bill the corporate account, and we will literally, you know, if a franchisee wants to see our invoice to a corporate account, they can. So being completely genuine with anything we say, supportive. We'll have a WhatsApp group. We'll pick up the phone pretty much, you know, other than in meetings, you know, I pick up the phone at any point, weekends, evenings, whatever, to a franchisee who needs help in any way. So, you know, we've kind of like, I guess, you know, we've got a few central pillars, you know, transparency, you know, openness, support, also as well, you know, just being very customer focused, and we're just trying to then hone that in with them.
The transparency piece is really interesting, and if you do the webinar that I did have, we had Michael Omar, who works in business with us, but he was at Baker's Delight, and I don't know if you know much about the model with Baker's Delight. They have full like on their name badges at their conferences, it's their sales figures and their margins.
Oh, wow.
So not only transparency between you and the franchisee, but between the two franchisees, so they all know where they all are. They send the numbers around and stuff, and that. So for John and I, when we talk to lots of businesses, and Michael works in our business, so there's a Baker's Delight full transparency, and then he was at Boost Juice for a number of years, and again, there's a lot of great things that have come out of that business as well about how they treat franchisees. But the trust thing that you talked about earlier, like no one wants to give their numbers up when they don't trust the
absolutely.
So you have to demonstrate, you know, I work with a couple of different groups, and they talk about the trust bank, and you know, like you make deposits into the trust bank, and it's pretty easy to. You can blow it pretty quickly.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. So we're far away from where Baker's Delight is. But I guess, you know, we have had to obviously do a lot of sweeping up and, you know, starting to put little steps in place to build that trust. So, you know, it would probably be about 2035, probably by the time our guys would walk around sharing their sales figures.
That's right. We just invested into 4 franchise systems as well, all emerging systems, and so we're the new guys on the block in these businesses, and it's you know, building trust with when we're partnering with the owners in some cases as well. So we've got to build it at that level and at that level, and at the and a lot of and some of the franchisees, you have heard it all before. The owners came in, they said they're going to do this, and they didn't do that. So
that's the problem. One of the things that we're looking for in any business we buy is we want it to be well established. So a lot of businesses we look at, they're 30 plus years old, been around forever, and sealed fridges has also been around for well more than 30 years. So there's a long history there, and there's a.
So why is that? Because
for us,
yeah. So when you're looking at them, like, because they've obviously hasn't grown massively in 30 years, so it's been pretty flat. But you think you can change that? Is that
not really? No. So Patron Companies is our holding vehicle, which we're using to buy these small businesses, and the number one thing we're looking for is stability. Yeah, if we buy $2 million of earnings, we want it to keep making $2 million of earnings. So we look for things that are very well established in the local communities, have good operating systems. They're not reliant on a key person. So you haven't got that sort of key person risk. You know, the owner who's got all the customer relationships or all the intellectual property. They don't have one customer who makes up 40% and 50% of their sales, which once the relationship with the owner's gone, they suddenly put that out to tender. So everything we're looking at initially is stability and resilience, because the value creation model for us is to take the cash flows from that business and buy the next business. And then take the cash flows from that and that's where you create that compounding mechanism, which gets you to those 50, 100, 500 times return on your money or multiple of money. So for us, stability is the most important thing. And one of the biggest indicators of stability is how long they've been around for. So we like businesses that have been around for 30 years, not businesses that have been around for 3 years, because they're not tested.
You're not in tech. You're not in that.
No hockey growth. Yeah,
exactly. And growth for us is almost a negative. Because it's risky. Yeah, a bit of growth is good. All businesses need a bit of growth to keep alive.
They can't be going backwards.
That's right. Don't be going backwards. But if they're growing at 30% a year, to us, that's a bit like, well, how do we value that? You know, is that going to continue? What's driven that? Is that really sustainable? Creates a lot of questions for us. Has it peaked and it's going to come crashing back down again? We just want the business that's doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, our model, with a couple of the ones we've looked at, they have gone down, but it's like we understand why. And so we're like, okay, so they've gone, you know, they're not massive. They've been around for a long time, but they've just dipped.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, we think we can help that and turn that back around.
Yeah, yes.
We're not buying in at the highest point because it's not flying, but we've got a team around it. So it's just looking at what are our skill sets and how can we add to this business.
Yes,
and
that's
how
right.
we can keep it growing.
Yeah.
So with the private equity thing, so I haven't left a lot of time for this, but unfortunately, because I would talk about this for a long time, but private equity in the US, we've got businesses in the US, and private equity in the US in franchising is massive. So I've been to the last 3 franchising conferences, the IFA, I've been to the private equity events there. I've got franchising clients and business we own in the US. And so in the US, it's really, really big. And I get why, because the similar things that you're talking about, like it's not recurring revenue, but it's like recurring. Like, you know, the franchisees are paying their royalties. There's a lot of franchise systems that are underfunded, undercapitalized. And so adding a little bit of capital, they can grow a little bit quicker. Yeah. And it's private equity, so they do have a 3 to 5 year plan generally to get out, depending on the fund. But now what's happened is, you know, 20 years later, there's another private equity firm that's going to buy them. And then they've all got who am I going to sell to and which private equity firm, which you know better than I do. In Australia, that hasn't really happened.
No.
Right.
So, you know, do you think, you know, you've worked in both markets and you've worked in that space. Is it just because the market's too small for private equity and that's why we need businesses like yours to get into a smaller space? Or do you think Australia is just behind and it'll happen?
Yeah, look, I think most things that happen in the US will happen in Australia, so I'd suspect it will happen. We're definitely targeting that 2 to 4 million-ish below most interest from private equity. And private equity, I think, is interested in franchise businesses because if the model is right and you can roll out these franchise territories, it's a bit like a retail. You've got a great retail concept, you just keep rolling out retail locations. So you get this very high growth, very high returns on capital if you're buying the franchise system because you don't have to really invest a lot. All the franchisees make the capital investments. So it can be a great return on capital business, and it can grow if the model works well. You keep rolling out more territories. I think in Australia, one of the challenges is probably is just the size. Yeah, the
size of the market.
Size of the market.
As in how big can they actually grow?
Yeah.
Correct, yeah. And so what you'll see in groups where private equity has got, I think, into either retail, multi-location retail operations, which have some similarities to multi-site franchise businesses. They have a whole range of brands. It's not just one business. It's multiple brands. Whether it's some of these groups that have multiple different fast food brands or whatever it might be. So probably in the franchise space, I'll have to do something similar where I'll have to look at different franchise models because one is harder to make big enough.
Well, that's right. And so I think the model in the US is often have one brand that they buy and pick a sector. And if it's food, then let's put other food brands around it and we'll run one office. Whereas, which could still happen. Like in Australia, there's somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 franchise systems. But the majority of them are less than 25 units. And probably 100% of those are all, or not 100, the 95% are all owned by a small business themselves. Mum and dad, they're doing it. And so it's an interesting time where private equity, there is more of it. It's just, often they see franchising as not a great opportunity.
Well, they'll need a platform. Private equity is not going to roll their sleeves up and do it themselves. I mean, we're in this case, Anya in particular, I say we, but it's actually Anya's running to the fridge, so it's actually her. But Anya's really rolled her sleeves up. She's literally on the phone to the franchisees all day, every day, and corporate clients and the like. Private equity is not going to do that. So they need a platform. They need one that's big enough with a management team and a management structure who can do all the stuff that you're talking about. And in Australia, I think it's hard to find that platform in the franchise space that's big enough to actually do all the work for the rest of the models or units you might bring in or the systems you might bring in.
And so I know we're nearly time to finish, but one of the questions I ask people is about, what are their tips for emerging franchisors? Because a lot of the people, it's a franchise industry. Maybe we'll ask Anya this question, but both of you.
Sure.
Like now you've, newer to franchising, but been in business and lots of different businesses. So is there things you say as a franchisor that you'd say to other franchisors if you're in a forum or what would you say is your learnings or your tip for franchisors?
I think one of the things we did, and I think it probably comes with age, is we put aside our egos. So we got down, to a very basic level and said, look, we don't know anything about this industry, guys, you tell us, so we, and that was one of the reasons why we really wanted, one-on-one conversation with each franchisee. So we're not going to come in on day one saying, hey, we're fantastic, we've got all this experience and this is my marketing plan. It's like, what is working for you in your territory? Every territory has its nuances. So I think being able to, put aside that kind of like, I'm going to come in and change the world and all that kind of stuff. You've got to meet them where they're at.
But I think what you said, because I'm just thinking about the franchisors.
Yeah.
Some of them are the founders. So they were the guy baking the bread at the start. And so they've evolved, and others are acquirers. So they've come in at different things.
Yes.
But I think what you've done, the answer is to listen to the franchisees.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just
anyone on a listening tour, essentially.
Yeah.
So yours is very different because you do have lots of experience that you could add. You could have gone bang, 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 we're going to change this, and this because I know this, right?
Yeah.
But what you've done is gone, okay, let's listen first and let's try and understand it from the franchisee's point of view. So I think a lot of franchisors, that's not necessarily what they do because they think they know best and they've developed a system that has worked. Yeah. People are profitable over there. Yeah. And so you're not doing it. You must be wrong because these 10 people over here or these 150 people over here are all doing it.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily the case because it's a different situation for that franchisee.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah, so, it's getting down to that, level of you. At the end of the day, Sealer Fridge wouldn't be anywhere without our guys on the road, doing the job. And so we really need to understand where they're at, what are their frustrations, what are they motivated by, what do they need, and then, looking at that low-hanging fruit. Sometimes that low-hanging fruit is just, like, for instance, one guy wants his emails sent to one email address and not another email address, and that makes such a massive difference, and then suddenly, he's so much happier going out doing his job, and then happier clients, happier reviews, all that kind of stuff. So it's sometimes some of the little things, but again, I think that's where you just have to turn on your big listening ears rather than your fix-it ears.
But it is a little bit about, we're in this together, so we're going to listen. But I guess then from the investor point of view, if each of those people increase by 10%, you're getting royalties on this. So the franchisor is benefiting by all these little increases because they're engaged, they're happy, and they're more profitable at the unit level.
Yes,
And
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other advice you asked about advice that we give is that if you're coming in to buy a franchise system, you want to have a very clear view of what value you can add as the franchisor. And I think if all you're doing is sending out invoices to the franchisees every month, they're gonna get pretty upset with you pretty quickly. So you got to have a very clear view of what the real value you can bring, I think, as a franchisor is. And so in the case of Seal Fridge, we're the only national provider of fridge seal replacement services. And so we saw that on the one hand, and we saw this growing scale of most of our customers are commercial. So there's growing scale of all the fast food operators, growing the numbers of units they've got from 50 to 100, 100. They're getting bigger, they're getting more sophisticated, and more of them want a one-stop solution, or they're even going through a maintenance firm that does all their maintenance for them, and they want one solution. So we felt winning corporate accounts for the system is a real value add that we can bring at the franchisor level by going to the Grills and the Yochis and the Coles and the Woolworths and these big corporate accounts require a lot of work to get on their platform. But then suddenly we've got this corporate account that we can serve because we're the only national provider. We could bring those two elements together. So I think unless you've got a clear view of what you're going to do to help your franchisees.
No, I think that's really important because the franchisees, like the trust is the thing that, what are you going to do to help me? Yeah. And the franchisors are often like, well, I've only got limited resources. If there's a marketing fund, it's not going to market you in Wollongong. It's going to market the whole brand generally. And they're like, well, I don't really care about that. I just want you to market for me. But if you're delivering on that is increasing revenue.
That's right.
And
it's creating a moat. It's creating an economic moat that Warren Buffett's always talking about.
Yeah.
That means Seal Fridge just becomes more and more protected by this moat because we've got all the corporate accounts.
Sounds great. Enjoying it?
Yeah, we are. We are.
That's great.
No, we are. I mean, every day is very different. But I mean, I personally love, seeing the relationships that we've built over the year. Particularly with some of the ones who I think were quite cynical and negative about the franchisor relationship, but actually now them really embracing us. And I guess that motivates me. And I love Seal Fridge from kind of like this whole, environmental perspective. So we're starting to have some great talks with kind of like on an industry level about circular circular economy. What do we do? How do we, reduce landfill of, fridges and freezers and all that kind of stuff. So kind of like on that level, it's a really interesting business, and I think we'll see, hopefully a few exciting projects take off. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you both.
Thanks,
coming
Bruce.
in.
Thank you. It's been fun.
And for those listening, remember to like and share, and thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.